to the accumulation of more debt. There is. The debt's kryptonite is contentment. And contentment means a settled conviction that I have everything I need. Contentment means a settled conviction, not an idea, not a feeling, but a settled conviction that I have everything I need. So let's look at what some scriptures have to say about that. We're about to go, oh, look at that. There's one I don't have in my book. Okay, here's one I gave to Emmeline and didn't put on my list. So here we go. In Hebrews, Paul says, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. Contentment, right? Contentment is a gift. Keep your lives free from the love of money, not from money. Notice, please, it doesn't say keep your lives free of money and be content with what you have. It says keep your lives free from the love of money. Completely different thing. We'll talk about it a little bit more farther on. And then we're going to look, I think, at something from, this is from 1 Timothy chapter 6. And this first part, prior to this, so Timothy, the books of Timothy are Paul writing to a young minister who's in charge of a big church in Ephesus, which was a huge city with lots of money and lots of different ideas. And this young guy was trying to be the leader that his people needed. And so Paul had spent a number of verses prior to the ones we're going to look at talking about those to watch out for. And the people he was talking about were those who thought that godliness or their relationship with God meant financial or material gain. Yeah, watch out for those guys. Do you remember when we were doing the series on the prodigal son? And we talked about the younger son and the elder son, and that they both missed the point because they were both in relationship with their father to get what they wanted. And that attitude kept them far from their father and far from home. So that is a consistent message throughout, right? That a relationship with God is not about material gain. So then, Paul goes on to say to Timothy, of course, there is great gain in godliness. So now, Paul's going to explain himself because he knows people are going to argue with what he said. And he said, there is great gain in godliness. I mean, he believes, as he wrote and as was written in by Peter, he believes that through his relationship to Christ, he had everything he needed. Everything he needed for his relationship with Christ, with God, to be living right, and everything he needed to stay alive and in this skin, right? So everything he needed. Of course, there is great gain in godliness, combined with contentment. That deep, settled conviction that I have everything I need. There is great gain in godliness combined with contentment. For we have brought nothing into the world so that we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with these. So Paul's talking about a different economy. Paul's talking about a spiritual economy, right? Paul's talking about contentment. And the Greek word for contentment in the original Greek version was, and I'm going to completely mess up this pronunciation, but it's autakira, or something like that. I should have looked up the pronunciation. But by that word, the Greeks meant a complete self-sufficiency. They meant a frame of mind which was completely independent of all outward things, and which carried the secret of happiness within it. They believed that contentment never came from possessions or external things. In Proverbs, and just so you know it wasn't a new thought, in Proverbs 30, the writer says, in a request of God, "Two things I ask of you, do not deny them to me before I die." We're going to get back to Timothy. This is, sorry. Two things I ask of you, do not deny them to me before I die. Remove far from me falsehood and lying. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food I need, or I shall be full and deny you, and say, "Who is the Lord?" Or I shall be poor and hungry, and steal and profane the name of my God. There is power in contentment. Okay, and so we're going to go on now. Thank you for your patience. So the Proverbs verse talks about that, right? Like if we have too much, it's when you have too much or you're comfortable, it's easy to kind of fall into that idea that I got this, I did this, I've got it, don't worry, right? And if you don't have enough, then you need to do what you need to do to get what you need. So Paul goes on in 1 Timothy, "But to those who want to be rich, those who want to be rich fall into temptation." So this doesn't say those who are rich fall into temptation. You catch that? Those who want to be rich. Why is that important? Because it points where our hearts are. Those who want to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. Don't just stay there for a minute. Now, I read this verse, right? And I can immediately imagine the kind of ruin and destruction that other people get plunged into if they want money. But the invitation here, right, is to look at this and say, what is the ruin and destruction I get plunged into? Because I want money or because I want anything outside myself to try to fill that God-shaped hole, right? It's really easy when we read the scriptures to just let it be about other people. But the invitation is always to say, where's my weakness? What's the Spirit putting its finger on in my spiritual life? And so we go on. "For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil." Now, let's stop again and look at that. It does not say money is the root of all kinds of evil, does it? No. It says the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. So again, it's that something outside of me is going to make this better. It's what drives our accrual of debt. It's what drives our lives that just seek to fill us, and it's not helpful. And in their eagerness to be rich, some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. So I want to tell you something. We're talking about debt. We're talking about wealth. We're talking about this kind of off relationship to money and to things, right? Which is a total contrast to contentment. Because when I love riches, when I want, right, I'm in a place of discontent. Miserable, irritable, and discontent, and I will do whatever I have to do to get what I want. It's just like a kid having a temper tantrum. That's part of our human nature. So, our definition of our needs is driven by the situation. And there are things, like I've been saying this, right? There are things we need to have credit for. We may need to have credit to buy a house, or we may need to have credit to buy a car. There may be things, and the invitation has not been, don't buy anything by credit, though that's what I'm trying to do in my own life. The invitation is pause and think about it. Where is this desire to purchase is coming from? Is it coming from that kind of unsettled place in me that makes me say, yes, I want this, I want it, I want it, I want it. Really, you all know what that feels like. Tell me you all know what that feels like. Do you all know what that feels like? I want it, I want it, I want it. Well, don't raise your hands, it's okay. We all have that situation where something we want, we talk it into being a need. I wanted a Google Pixel, right? They had at that time, what was the best camera. So I wanted a Google Pixel. I needed a Google Pixel so I could take great pictures. Do you know what I take pictures of? My cats. Do I post any of those? No, because God love them, my friends don't deserve that. I take pictures of my cats and my dogs and my kids. Occasionally, too many selfies, I didn't need that phone. My other phone was working perfectly well, but I could trade it in for free, right? Which is not necessarily the truth. So this inclination to turn wants into needs is driven first of all by our human nature, and secondly by the marketing that we're surrounded with. But what we really need, according to the Gospels, according to the scriptures we've read and other ones, what we really need is contentment. The settled conviction that I have everything I need. So, how do we acquire the secret of contentment? And now we're going to the last slide. There it is. Paul says in Philippians 4, I know what it is to have little, and I know what it is to have plenty. He's both been very poor and very rich in his life. In any and all circumstances, I have learned the secret of being well fed and going hungry, of having plenty and of being in need. And the next slide says, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. So this attitude of contentment, this attitude of I have enough, I can't reach down into my bootstraps and pull that up from somewhere. But I can do it through God. So, the amount of money or stuff we have has nothing to do with the amount of deep contentment we are talking about. The kind of deep contentment that allows us to be peaceful, happy, and free. So what are some practical steps we can take? Closing off with this. If you feel like something in your life might be out of balance, go online and look up some financial priorities quizzes or some life priorities quizzes. There's all kinds of them on there. 5 minutes to do one gives you a chance to pause and think about your life. Recognize that if there is a need for change, if we feel uncomfortable with some area of our life, we can't do it on our own. God strengthens us and will surround us with teachers if we're willing to look for them. Be willing to believe you already have what you need. So practice gratitude. Make gratitude lists, or through your day, when you get in and your car starts, say, thanks that my car started this morning. When when you're in the kitchen and you have to decide what to cook because you have so much stuff in your fridge, say, thank you, God, that I have this decision to make. Right? Like all through the day, when you're washing dishes and you're elbow deep, if you do this, if you're elbow deep in sudsy water, say thank you for the warm water, the soap, and the fact I have dishes and that we ate a good meal. Begin to cultivate a sense of gratitude. Find people, like if there's something that needs to change in you, whatever it is, right? If you're being twigged that something's off balance, it might have absolutely nothing to do with your financial life, right? Find stories of people who have done what you need to do in terms of financial change or any other kind of change. Practice prayer. Help me be content with what I have. It's a good prayer. It's one that God answers. Help me be content with what I have. And remember, when all else fails, it can really help to say to yourself, I already have everything I need. Amen. And so we're going to go into a time of silence.